Hey, converted man here. Well, I had some homework pop up. I was busy trying to work my way through this book, but, S.J. Thomason uploaded a video that distracted me. This time she had Steve McRae on. Pretty impressive, because he's pretty well known and hosted the Great Debate Community on Google Plus when that was a thing, and then when that started not being a thing, had a YouTube channel with it, and then branched out from that to other endeavors, and is still around doing various debates on any number of topics. And he's well read in a number of philosophical ideas and has talked much on epistemology, as well as, well, pretty much all the philosophical things that are out there, including logic at some point. But my main thing, my primary thing is logic, so that's all I can look at and all I can deal with, and to that point I'm an amateur logician at best. So S.J. Thomason labeled her video, Why Matt Dillahunty is Wrong, with Steve McRae. And by the way, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing any names, I can't say names. Nowhere in her description is any link to what Matt Dillahunty might have said and or when, or what it is that Steve is proving or showing is wrong in regards to Matt Dillahunty. So, looking at Matt Dillahunty, or looking at Steve's page, there's two different articles. There's one that's related to the video, which is The Gumballs and God Better Explained, which links back to a different article about something that Matt Dillahunty had said at some point on the atheist experience. Scrolling through that page, I see no link to what atheist experience that was, nor is it named on what number it is or a clip on YouTube. There's nothing provided. So I do not know when Matt Dillahunty said this, and so there's not much I can do with that. Plus, I'm not Matt Dillahunty, so I couldn't respond anyways. Of course, at the time, it might have been relevant. It could very well be that on that particular day that he published this was mentioned in that particular day on the Atheist Experience show, and thus, if you had been paying attention, you would know exactly what he was talking about, but it's still good to include your sources. Okay, so apparently, and the other part of that is Matt Dillahunty has said many, many things on the Atheist Experience and then later changed his mind. So it's possible that he said something that he didn't mean. It's also possible that he said something where he changed his mind, or it wasn't very nuanced, or who knows. Just because he says it doesn't make it gospel. But having said all of that, you're still free to criticize it because it's there to be criticized. Apparently, Matt Dillahunty said that either somebody has to be an atheist or a theist. Either you have to, and so, well, what do you mean by that? Because those words have multiple meanings due to natural language. And due to how language has evolved throughout time, people use different words in different ways. But Steve McRae, if you know anything about him, he has a particular idea of what the word atheist, how it's used, or how he wants to use it. I got to be really careful here because he is not saying that other people have to use it this way. I'll repeat that because it's very important. Steve is not telling you or I or anyone else how to use this word. He's not saying the word ought to be used this way, or that it must, or even necessarily that it should, but that as far as I can determine, the subtext, if you will, of the arguments that I've seen and whatnot, is that this clarifies the matter. When he's talking about this word atheist in his articles or when he speaks, he wants it to mean a single thing. And I actually applaud that effort because that is a good way to avoid natural language problems, is stick to one definition of the word throughout, if possible, your entire existence during debates and maybe online or however you want to frame that. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean you couldn't update it later, but to try to stay consistent is a good thing. But an artificial language could do that really easily because you could just have one word for every single thing, and that's not the language we have. So I think that these two people are opposed in this interesting way because Steve, on one hand, is looking at it and saying, well, what I mean by this word is this one thing, and then Matt Dillahunty is looking at it and saying, well, I've been promoting it for goodness knows however long he's done the atheist experience, plus all the atheist Patreon things and all the stuff he's done on YouTube, yada yada, where he's tried to make the popular definition of atheism stick, which is less liked by many philosophers, including Steve. And I would certainly consider Steve to be a philosopher. Whether or not he has any degrees doesn't matter. He could write a book on philosophy. I'd read it. I'd also read a book if Matt wrote something. Maybe both of them have, and I just don't know anything because I haven't looked into it. That's always possible as well. But regardless, they might have had some sort of falling out or something like this. I don't know. Doesn't matter if they've had drama or not. What matters is the arguments. So when you have an argument against something that someone has said or is saying or well, you couldn't do will say, but regardless, you want to have your citations so that you give the other side. I always have OV, original video, and the original video is always linked because you can then look at that and say, well, you missed this part. And I might say, yeah, I did. I didn't care about that part. Or I see your point. I should cover that part and cover it. It just depends on how well you form your argument. And so it's difficult to not have any links to what Matt Dillahunty said and where and when. So I can't tell what happened here. I don't know what happened here, and I don't want to speculate. As far as the dichotomy, is there a true dichotomy between atheist and theist? No, there isn't, because there's another word which is agnostic. There's also other words like atheist. Atheist can be seen in two different ways, and I suppose somebody could say that a true atheist, although that would incur no true Scotsman fallacies, but nonetheless, they could say that everybody is wrong regarding God because the word God is so incoherent that it has no meaning at all whatsoever. And so if you say you're a theist or you say you're an atheist, you're both wrong because the word doesn't even, it's like blah, blah, blah. It's just nonsense of a word. But then there's the atheist that's possibly, I don't know, but the lesser version that is simply that the word God is incoherent, and thus that is what I'm going to call myself. Now, I can call myself atheist and skeptic because, well, I can, and so can you, and the words are flexible enough to allow this to happen. And there's different ways I look at that in my own brain, that in regards to God, I'm an atheist because I don't know what that word means. That's up to the theist to provide. In regards to Yahweh, I'm what you could call a strong atheist, or what Steve would just call atheist, because for Steve, he views it as atheist being there is no God. That statement, rather than I don't believe in a God, or I don't know if there's a God. I don't believe in God, and in regards to Yahweh, I don't believe in Yahweh, and I would be willing to say there is no Yahweh. But other God concepts, I don't know. I haven't looked into them that well. For the most part, most of them I would probably just not believe in, but some of them I'd say no, that can't exist. If it's logically incoherent, then unless you want to say that your God is logically incoherent and you toss logic out the window, which at that case anything goes anyway, so I probably wouldn't want anything to do with that God, but it could still be real. You wouldn't have any possible hope to argue for that God, and so you couldn't ever say that that God was a thing, and even if it showed up, because it's illogical by nature, and there'd be no underpinning to prove it to anybody at that point. And so you have this, is Matt Dillahunty wrong question. And if he said that everyone must be this or that, then in that instance, yes, he was wrong. And I don't know what he said, so I can't analyze that section. Now, I did look over, and I will link, and I should have linked before I started this, the different Great Debate Community posts on these subjects, and I'll put that in my chat now so I can remember to do that later. And the Gumball one is mainly the focus of the S.J. Thomason talk with Matt Dillahunty, which I'll link in my thing here as well. Okay, so that's every link that I care about in there. So the Gumballs analogy, for this one as well, I couldn't find what Matt Dillahunty had to say about this specifically. But I did find references to Matt Dillahunty that have said what they think Matt Dillahunty is saying about the gumball analogy. Now, whether or not that's accurate reporting or not, who knows? But there's a couple things. I guess I'll link those as well. Here we go. More links. Gotta have all the links. Wikipedia, of course, not very strong of a thing, but it is a link, and it's something at least. So in regards to the gumball analogy, according to these websites, which could be completely wrong, is that Dillahunty essentially is using this gumball analogy in regards to the burden of proof. So he says something like, let's imagine that there's a jar of gumballs. You don't know maybe you don't know the volume of the jar. There's certain information that you don't have. All you know is that there are some amount of gumballs in the jar to the point where it looks like it's full, and you don't know if there's spaces in there that are filled with larger gumballs or other objects or whatever. You have no idea. And then the statement is it even or odd? The question is it even or odd? And then the only way to answer is I don't know. You couldn't say it's even, and you couldn't say it's odd. And that's it. It's just, you would be dubious without more evidence, without more knowledge of the gumball jar and the gumballs and so on. You could make some sort of calculated guess if things were fair. If the gumballs were of an average size and you knew the dimensions of the jar, you could actually do some mathematics and make a good estimated guess of how many gumballs are probably in there, and then you would win the gumballs and take them home, or whatever the prize is, or marbles, or whatever object you want. But ultimately, it's either even or odd in reality. But we don't know which the reality is. We just know that we know some stuff, but we don't know anything at all. And of course, the skeptic could be like, well, I don't even know if those are gumballs unless you let me test them to make sure they're gumballs. But that's kind of a moot point. So Steve's takes the gumball analogy and expands upon it to really explain the analogy even deeper. And I think he does a wonderful job. I really do. I think that it is a really good, in-depth viewing of this particular analogy, although the whole point of an analogy is to make things simpler, and he takes an analogy and makes it more complex. Good job, philosophers. That's what you guys do all the time. Make it harder for us logicians. We like it simple. You want to complicate it, I guess. But okay, so is there a third possibility in reality in regards to if there is or isn't gumballs? Or not that, sorry, that there's an even or odd number of gumballs. Is there a third option? No, because that's not how even and odd works. But of course, at some point, the analogy breaks down because you're not really talking about gumballs. You're actually talking about this entity known as God, which it could exist or it could not exist, but you could also say, well, it might have once existed and now it doesn't exist, or it doesn't exist right now, but maybe one day it will exist. And you could have some varieties there with it. And I suppose you could say that the gumballs were one time even and another time odd, and because somebody ate one, So but the middle ground, if you will, is I don't know. I'm not going to answer if there is odd or even gumballs, and that is, as Steve outlines, agnostic. And he then frames that as atheist means no gumball or odd number or even number of gumballs, whichever you prefer, I guess. And then theist means yes gumball or the other way, the other side. And then the agnostic is saying, I don't know which one of those is true. And that is one way to look at those words. But natural language has made it so that you and I and many people view the word atheist in a different way. There's sometimes people debate words, and sometimes it's interesting, sometimes it's not. I tend to get a little bit frustrated with it because I see it as that you can't really make a logical argument. Not really. I mean, you can to some degree, but there's always going to be, I don't know when it happens, but somewhere in there, you're either going to have to appeal to the majority, or you're going to have to appeal to authority, or you're going to have to do something else to say, well, this is what the word is because all these people say that's what the word is. And then you run into problems of like, well, that doesn't make it real because you can't just define things into existence. So is there a point to debating words? I think yes, because I think that all debate has a purpose and a point to it. It's the discipline of engaging your mind and using logic and argumentation and trying to sharpen your ability to do so. I think that S.J. Thomason, however, frames this somewhat dishonestly, to some extent, because he left out some stuff. But then again, you could say, well, but Steve also left out some stuff, so maybe she couldn't put in stuff because she didn't have it to put in. I don't view Steve as dishonest, though, at least in regards to being a philosopher. I don't know or want to speak about anything else. That's all the arguments are all I care about. What he's written is all I'm focusing on. The person or what he has or hasn't done or should have done or not done is irrelevant to me. And same with Matt Dillahunty. Completely irrelevant. The people are irrelevant. All that matters is the argument. I'm irrelevant. All that matters is the argument, or in this case, the analysis of these arguments. Why didn't he include those things? I have no idea. I didn't ask him. I don't know that he might tell me. He might not. He might, I don't know. But, I'm just more inclined to think that SJ, because she's an apologist, I trust less. So I'm like, I'm more likely to think that she's doing something funny. And I think This is not something I can argue for because it's trying to read somebody's mind in a sense. So it's mind reading. It's a logical fallacy. I think that SJ might feel, maybe, that a win against Dillahunty is a win against atheism. And that by making, if you will, the word atheist mean there is no God, that gives the burden of proof to atheists, and that means that any atheist online that doesn't shoulder that burden of proof is now automatically wrong. And you can and then the theist can go, well, you've got a burden too. And there's all sorts of problems with that. But not because of what you might think, but because of other reasons. But I don't know what you're thinking, and I don't know what she's thinking. So that's pure speculation on my part, is that because she felt that this was a win for the theist, is why she would invite him on to talk about this or whatever. Or maybe she just likes knocking Matt Dillahunty down a notch because Matt Dillahunty served her words on a platter back to her on the atheist experience once upon a time, and then just hung up on her because he'd had it with her. So she might have a little, chip on her shoulder. But hey, so do we all. So why am I talking about any of this if I agree with everyone or kind of agree, disagree? I don't know. It's a thing to talk about that involves logic, and it involves debate, and involves words. And so all of these things are things that I'm interested in. And it happens to be that these are big names. And so by invoking these big names, I'll get people to watch this video, and then maybe they'll watch other videos that I've done. So it's all part of my greedy plan to get attention. I don't care. I don't care if you watch any other stuff. I don't care if you watch this, but if you're not watching this, then you didn't know that I didn't care. So I guess I do care. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to read chat now. So that's the end of my thoughts on the gumball stuff and everything that I have to work with. If and when I get more information about the gumball thing, I'll update this. I haven't asked Steve. I don't even know if I guess I probably should ask him, where the link is or what he's talking about. But he's a busy guy. I don't know. I'll try. Okay. If you really want me to, you're going to have to tell me in the comments, not in the side chat, but in the comments. Yeah, man, go ask him. And then I'll be like, all right, fine. But if only one of you asks, then I won't do it. There. Okay. I've made all sorts of demands that are pointless and crazy. Now I'm going to read chat. So you can stop the video now if you don't want to hear me read chat and / respond to chat. So if you don't care about that, you can stop now, because I don't care about analytics or I don't care about that stuff. Okay. Whew. Oh, that was fun. It was a lot of homework, by the way. That's why I had to do a video about it, because I did post a rather long comment on SJ's video. And so, I mean, I didn't want that to go to waste. So this is basically that. And although my comments there, and I suppose, you know what, I'll read that and then I'll talk about chat. And yeah, that's what I'll do. Okay, where's the thing? Uh-oh, I can't go to that on the same tab. That would be bad. That would really be bad. It's like, oh, your stream has shut down because you went to the other video. I said, bleep me, this is homework. So I quoted a version of what the word agnosticism means. Oh, man, this is long. You know what? I'm not going to read it. I changed my mind. Screw it. I can do it. It's my channel. I don't care. Let's read the chat. What's up, alien? Mythicist, Johnny says. Yeah, mythicist is a whole nother category, a subset, if you will, of in regards to Jesus. You think that that Jesus is a myth. This is called the mythicist position. Well, I certainly think that all of Jesus's actions that are miraculous would put him into the myth category. He couldn't have done those things he wouldn't have done those things because he couldn't. If he did anything, it would have been some sort of magic trick, illusion, sleight of hand. He might have done the water to wine. That's something that Penn and Teller can do. So he might have done a version of that, and then it got exaggerated. It might be that he did something like that you see evangelistic pastors do regarding the blind man, where the person isn't really all the way blind. There's all sorts of possibilities, and then those things got exaggerated over time to the point where he's walking on water and doing other things that nobody can do. So in that regard, that part of the story I would view as myth. In fact, that's the only way to categorize it. Did the person exist? I don't know. I don't even know how to know if that person existed. He's so far divorced from the Bible version that if there was a person named Jesus Christ, it doesn't even matter. It's like if you were to say, well, the Abraham Lincoln from Abraham Lincoln versus the zombies, that's the actual Abraham Lincoln. No, it wasn't, and now I have to be skeptical of Abraham Lincoln. So anyways, that's how I would think. How do I feel about polytheism? I mean, I don't necessarily have any. That was Leela Bryant asked. Well, I mean, all theism, I'd say is, some are better than others in regards to what they ask their followers to do, but I don't have any particular emotions about them other than that people can do awful things because of that. If you don't have empirical evidence and or a repeatable test and or a valid and sound argument, I think you should be skeptical of the belief, whatever that belief is. And in polytheism, you have multiple gods, so that's just more gods for me to be skeptical of, I guess. Let's see. Utah, this is the way I like filming because it annoys people. So that's it. Okay, so all right, that's it. That was, I caught up to chat. I responded to those that had anything for me. Hopefully, the watermark appears on your stream if you use StreamYard, but I'm just using the webcam upload option on YouTube, Johnny. So you can't have more than one person on this, as far as I know. You have to use some other streaming thing that's way too complicated for me to figure out to have more than one people join in or do anything interesting. Anyways, so that's it. I got caught up to chat, and hopefully if yeah, right. If Matt Dillahunty saw this, he wouldn't take offense to anything I said, and if he did, sorry. Even though I don't know why he's got thick skin. I'm not worried about him. I could say he's a donkey head. He would be like, yeah, so what's your argument? Steve, Steve has also got pretty thick skin, so I don't think he would care either. But just in case, I'm sorry, don't kill me. Not that anyone used that. So, because, I mean, after all, we're all grown ups. We can all take a little bit on the chin, and I didn't say anything bad about anybody other than you. You know who I'm talking about. Oh, yeah, you're a poopy head. Yeah. Anyways, but the rest of you are fine. Anyways, all right. That's all I got. Thanks for watching, commenting, liking, subscribing, hitting the bell icon, doing all those things that you're supposed to need to do so that I stay relevant. Not that matters. No, do it for the arguments, not for me, but for the arguments. That's right. Yeah, that's it. That's how to do it. All right. I need to sign off, and somebody said I should say stay skeptical, but I'm skeptical of that being a good outro. So I don't know what to do. Is there an even or odd amount of gumballs? I don't know. Could we find out? Yeah. What's interesting is those that assert you would never know one way or the other those that assert that it could not be discovered through scientific methods, those that assert it can only be found through spiritual or philosophical method. How do you know that that system will or will not get you to the answer? Do you have a system that proves that that system works? And the only system that humans have really come up with that consistently works and functions is science, and logic is probably a subset, or it could be seen as a subset of science. So that pretty much is it. If you don't have science or you don't have logic, then what do you have? A belief. And if all you have is a belief, you might be right on accident, but it's a really bad way to get to an answer because you'll never know if you're right or wrong. So, for those reasons, you should be skeptical of the things. I would say conclusions usually. It doesn't work. Skeptical of the things. Yes, skeptical of the things. Lobsters exist. I'm hitting the button now.